So today's discussion on Advaita and Dvaita Vedanta is based on the Upanishads. These Upanishads are texts which are found in the Vedas. The Vedas we know are the central text, the original and foundational texts of Hinduism. So in these Vedas, which are voluminous, scattered here and there, you find these smaller texts called the Upanishads. The Upanishads are the final, the highest, the ultimate teachings, the philosophical and spiritual teachings of the Vedas are found concentrated in these Upanishads. So Vedanta, which literally means the anta or end of the Vedas, it's not physically the end of the Vedas because the Upanishads are found scattered in different places, sometimes at the end of the Vedic Samhita, sometimes in the middle. So what it means, anta means the highest or final teachings. In Sanskrit, Siddhanta, the final conclusion of the Vedas, is found in the Upanishads. So that's why it's called Vedanta. Now, these Upanishads are highly regarded. In fact, Schopenhauer, the great German philosopher, was a fan, an early fan, a European fan of the Upanishads. He said that I consider no study in the world as profitable as the study of these Upanishads. He, in fact, got a translation of a Latin translation of a Persian translation of the Sanskrit original. He used to read that. It is said that he used to read it every day, a few pages every day before going to sleep. Now, how did it come to his hands? It's very interesting that the journey of the Upanishads to the West, that's the name of a book written by Swami Tathagatanandaji, who was my predecessor here at the Vedanta Society of New York. He was in New York for nearly 40 years, and among his many books is this very fascinating book, which talks about the journey of the Upanishads from India to the West. Dara Shukla, the Mughal prince, he translated the Upanishads into Persian, and the Persian text came to the hands of this young French Indologist, Anquetil Duperron, who was looking for original Zoroastrian texts, but he got this, and he translated it into Latin, and that went into the hands of Schopenhauer, and so on. And that's how it came into Western thought. A very contemporary reference to the Upanishads is found in this book, Waking, Dreaming, Being. It's a book written by Evan Thompson, who is a professor of philosophy at the University of British Columbia. So Evan Thompson, it's a very recent book, and he says consciousness studies, which is a hot subject these days, did not begin today, did not begin in recent times. It's actually very, very ancient, and it begins with the Upanishads. And then he makes a very remarkable comment on the Upanishads. He quotes his own father, William Irwin Thompson, who was also a philosopher, who says, the Upanishads is a watershed in the evolution of consciousness. Instead of being ethnocentric and dividing all global history between BC and AD, we should really divide it between before Upanishad and after Upanishad, BU and AU, because the sophisticated psychology of consciousness in the Upanishads represents a quantum leap forward in human development. So what a remarkable encomium for the Upanishads. It says that they're so important that human history should be divided into before Upanishad and after Upanishad. Now, these Upanishads are the philosophical foundation of Hinduism. The most well-known text is not the Upanishads but the Bhagavad Gita, but the Bhagavad Gita is actually nothing other than the essence of the Upanishads. One verse in praise of the Bhagavad Gita says that the Upanishads are the cows and the Bhagavad Gita is the milk of those cows. And Krishna is the milkman and Arjuna is the calf who drinks that milk and so on. Sarva Upanishado Gavo in that verse. So, and there is another text which is important to our discussion, which is called the Brahma Sutras. There's one Badarayana Vyasa who wrote in a sutra form 555 aphorisms, which embodies the philosophy of Vedanta. So Upanishads are the source text, foundational. In fact, by Vedanta, you mean Upanishad. That's it. And associated with that, Bhagavad Gita and these Brahma Sutras, These Brahma Sutras actually take up the philosophical issues, the questions, the doubts which come to our mind when we read the Upanishads. The Upanishads are more mystical and poetical, but the questions which arise, those are dealt with in the Brahma Sutras. Why the Brahma Sutras are important to today's discussion is this. This whole question of Advaita and Dvaita. Advaita I translate as non-dualism and Dvaita as dualism. So a non-dual Vedanta and dualistic Vedanta, all this comes from this text, the Brahma Sutra. Not exactly from this text, but from the commentaries on this text. About 1400 years ago, by modern dating, Adi Shankara-acharya, he wrote commentaries called Bhashya, of course, all of it in Sanskrit, explaining the Upanishads. He selected 10, by some accounts, 11 Upanishads, and he explained those in detail in his commentaries. And he commented upon the Bhagavad Gita, but crucially upon the Brahma Sutras. And these commentaries, later on, commentaries were written by other acharyas, Ramanujacharya, Madhvacharya, and others who came after Shankara-acharya. These commentaries on the Brahma Sutras are crucial for today's discussion. Why? Because it is the kind of interpretation, the framework, the paradigm which was set forth in these different commentaries that gave rise to different schools of Vedanta. The different schools of Vedanta are based on the commentaries on the Upanishads, Bhagavad Gita, and crucially Brahma Sutra. So Shankara-acharya interpreted Upanishads, Bhagavad Gita, and Brahma Sutra. Together, these three are actually known as Prasthanatrayi, the triple canon, the triple foundation, canonical texts of Vedanta. His interpretation, his commentary on that forms the basis of the school of Vedanta we call non-dual Vedanta, Advaita Vedanta. And the next person, about 200 years after Shankara-acharya, came Ramanujacharya, who gave a very different interpretation of the same texts. And his commentary, his Bhashya on the Brahma Sutra is called Sri Bhashya, where he openly and powerfully disputes Shankara-acharya's commentary and sets up his own interpretation of Vedanta, of the Upanishads, which came to be known as Vishishtadvaita Vedanta. About, again, 200 to 250 years after Ramanujacharya came Madhvacharya, who disputes both earlier interpretations and gives his own interpretation of Vedanta on his Bhashya, commentary on the Brahma Sutras. So Madhvacharya's commentary is known as the Purna Pragya Bhashya. Ramanujacharya's commentary is known as the Sri Bhashya. Shankara-acharya's commentary is known as Shariraka Mimamsa Bhashya. Madhvacharya's commentary forms the philosophical basis of the school known as Dvaita Vedanta, dualistic Vedanta. And that was not the end of it. Around that time, there came others. For example, Vallabhacharya, whose commentary on the Brahma Sutra forms the basis of yet another school of Vedanta called Shuddha Dvaita. Then comes Nimbarkacharya around the same time, whose commentary on the Brahma Sutras, known as the Vedanta Parijata Bhashya. Vallabhacharya's commentary is called Anubhashya. So his commentary, Nimbarkacharya's commentary on the Brahma Sutras, forms the philosophical basis of yet another school of Vedanta called Dvaita Vedanta. There is another one with which we are actually familiar. As Bengalis, we know of the Gaudiya Vaishnava Sampradaya, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So his followers, not he himself, but his followers systematized Gaudiya Vaishnavism, which is formed around the life and teachings of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, into another school of Vedanta called the Achintya Bheda Veda school. There was Baladeva, who wrote a commentary called Govinda Bhashya on the same Brahma Sutras. So if somebody is interested, I will make a clear division between Shankara-acharya's non-dual Vedanta and the rest. Why? Though they often style themselves as Advaita, Shuddha Advaita, Dvaita Advaita, Vishishta Advaita, only Ramanuja is unashamedly Dvaita. But all the others, they're some form of non-dualism, but actually, practically speaking, they are dualistic. At this point, I'll make a crucial point, a differentiation. What is it all about? This is the textual background. I'm giving you the textual background, but practically what does it come, or theoretically what does it come to? Where is the crucial difference? Jiva, Jagat, Ishvara. Ishvara means God. Jiva means sentient beings like us. Jagat is this material universe. God, sentient beings, material universe. This triangle, those who consider this triangle to be real and distinct, God is different from us, we are different from each other, and the world, material world, is an independent, different reality. Those who consider these differences to be real, these entities to be real and different from each other, they are dualistic. There is only one school which says these are not different. There is only one reality. All differences are illusory. Brahma Satyam Jagat Mithya, Jiva Brahmeva Napara. That is Shankara. So compared with Shankara's Advaita Vedanta, which is sometimes called Kevala Advaita, all the rest are actually dualistic. They will not admit it. They'll say we are some form of Advaita. Some will say yes, we are Dvaita. But practically speaking, they're dualistic because they admit, none of them will openly admit, I and God are one. None of them will say that. They will say there is a difference between the individual being and God, which cannot be erased. There is a fundamental difference. And one practical difference between the two, Shankara's Advaita keeps jnana or knowledge as its main plank, as its main methodology. Whereas all the other schools, without distinction, they are all bhakti schools, devotional schools. Vishishta Dvaita, Dvaita Vedanta, Shuddha Dvaita, Dvaita Dvaita, Achinta Bheda Ved, all give without any hesitation, give primacy to bhakti, devotion. Those who are interested, this book is very good for the bhakti schools of Vedanta. Swami Tapasyananda ji, this is published from, Swami Tapasyananda ji was a very senior monk of our order, vice president of our order. It's published from Madras, Ramakrishna Math Madras. So it gives you a very good outline of the lives of Ramanujacharya, our Madhvacharya, Vallabhacharya, Nimbakacharya, and Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and separate chapters on their philosophies. So all these schools are in a brief form. If you want it in one chapter, but without being oversimplified, this is a really good book. I've seen it being quoted in academic papers also. So now, what I'll do now is, let me speak of Dvaita Vedanta first. Instead of speaking in general about dualism, let me take, because the topic is Dvaita Vedanta, let me focus on the school of Dvaita Vedanta. So I'm particularly focusing on Madhvacharya school of Dvaita Vedanta. Remember, these are competing philosophies. None of them say, oh, I am teaching Advaita, or I am teaching Dvaita. No, they all say, we are teaching Vedanta. Shankara-acharya says, Shankara-acharya does not say, I'm teaching you Advaita Vedanta, I'm teaching you Vedanta. And Ramanuja-acharya says, that's not right, I am teaching you Vedanta. So Vedanta, this is the interpretation of Vedanta. So they are competing interpretations. So I'm going to focus on one school, Dvaita Vedanta. That also tallies with our the subject, and it's the most uncompromisingly, unhesitatingly dualistic school of Madhvacharya. So what does this Dvaita Vedanta say? See, there is a little problem in speaking in this way, because chronologically Dvaita Vedanta comes later, after Advaita Vedanta. So, and often Dvaita Vedanta develops itself in criticism of Advaita Vedanta. So we are actually reversing the time order. Why am I doing it? For psychological reasons. Because it's what I'm going to say, what Madhvacharya says, Dvaita Vedanta says, is actually very familiar to all of us. It is the kind of religion people are used to. God, faith, devotion, belief, rituals, worship, all of these are part of Dvaita Vedanta. Whereas Advaita Vedanta is quite radical. So first, I'll talk about Dvaita Vedanta. What does it say about religion and philosophy, our worldview? And then move on to Advaita Vedanta, which Shankara-acharya at least is chronologically prior. Another point to note, just worth mentioning, none of these figures claim to be the founders of the schools. They are very humble that way. All of them say, these are existing traditions. We are only writing commentaries. But there's no doubt each of them, even if these are existing tradition, each of them represents a landmark, a point of inflection in those traditions. All right, Dvaita Vedanta, what does it say? Briefly and quickly. It says there is one ultimate reality called Brahman, God. They use the name Vishnu. So Vishnu is the ultimate reality. Everything else is a dependent reality. Swatantra Paratantra. Swatantra means absolutely independent, um, omnipresent, omniscient, omnipotent, all powerful, present everywhere, and all knowing, full of all glorious qualities, and a personal God. Somebody who can listen to your prayers and grant your prayers and all that. And this God is Vishnu. Vishnu is the highest. So you can clearly see this firmly belongs in the Vaishnava camp. What about the rest of us? We are all real, but we are paratantra. We depend. We are not independent. We are entirely dependent on Vishnu. We means who? Sentient beings like us. We are all jivatma. Jiva, in short, jiva. Jivatma is a spark of consciousness associated with a subtle bodies, sukshma sharira, mind and intellect and prana, who inhabit physical bodies like this. So there is a material world provided by Prakriti. This Jagat, this material universe, is made by the source of material universe is called Prakriti. Prakriti literally means nature, material nature. And the entire physical universe, including our minds also, they're all generated by Prakriti. And we are like sparks of consciousness, sparks of awareness, this Jivatma. And we are associated with particular subtle bodies. In association with these subtle bodies, we are called Jivatma. Physical bodies die. They are born, they age, and they die. But we, like bits of software, going from computer to computer, device to device, we go from body to body. Could be animal bodies, could be human bodies, could be Devata bodies, higher bodies, lower bodies. We go through this cycle of life. Why do we go through this? Because of our karma. It's cause and effect. Actions have consequences. So we are involved in samsara, this world, and we have desires. We are attached to this world. We want things in this world. We want happiness. We want to avoid misery. And then we engage in what is called sakama karma, actions with desires. Everybody does it. So human beings are special because we have free will. We decide. And so this generates karma. Actions generate consequences. And these consequences build up. They are accumulated over lifetimes. And these consequences give rise to sukha dukkha, pleasure and pain. And to experience these pleasure and pain, we need bodies. Body after body, life after life goes on. So this is this explains this cycle of birth and death. Bodies come and go, but the subtle body, jivatma, consciousness plus the subtle body, this transmigrates. Janmantara, this idea of many lives. So this is something that is common to all Indian systems, all Indian thought, Hindu, all Vedic thought systems, all non-Vedic thought systems, including the Jainas and the Buddhists, and down to a more modern thought system like the Sikhs. All of them, all Indic thought systems accept multiple lives, transmigration from birth to birth, and karma. I remember one Swami in Hindi, he said, karma, or janmantar, the law of karma and this multiple births, ye gambhir tattva hai, Mahatma ji. These are very profound philosophies. Why? In spite of vast differences in different systems of Hindu philosophy, just like we see Dvaita and Advaita, vast differences between Hinduism and, say, Buddhism. Buddhism does not accept God. Buddhism does not even accept a permanent soul, Jivatma. No Jivatma, no Paramatma. But they all accept multiple lives and karma. Karma and multiple lives are accepted across the board, except the Charvaka materialist. Everybody else accepts this. So this is the Dvaita explanation for this multiple lives. Now, what is the destiny of, what is our destiny? Destiny is, after many lifetimes, due to ethical living, following dharma, avoiding what is nishiddha, prohibited, sinful, and doing what is videya, what is recommended, following dharma, one becomes ethical and develops a kind of detachment to worldly life, vairagya, And then the existence of God, Vishnu, seems more probable. There is an interest in spiritual matters. And by the grace of God, by good karma, one comes across the teachings, obviously the teachings of Dvaita Vedanta, and one gets a guru and a teacher, and one is told that there is an ultimate reality called Vishnu. We are all dependent on Vishnu. You are not a body, you're not a mind, you're actually a transmigrating jiva. Then this individual undergoes a series of exercises, bhakti exercises. What are these exercises? Um, First of all, ethical living, then devotion to God. Then what is this devotion to God like? Let me just quote from Madhvacharya is a great devotee of the Bhagavata Purana. So he often quotes from that. What is bhakti? So this ethical person who is now being taught bhakti by the teachers of Dvaita Vedanta, what does he learn? Shravanam Kirtanam Vishnur, Smaranam Padasevanam, Archanam Vandanam, Dashyam Sakhyam Atmanivedanam. These are the different forms of bhakti you find in the Bhagavata Dharma. Shravanam, you hear the glories of Krishna, for example, the avatar of Vishnu. You hear about the different avatars of Vishnu. Kirtanam, you sing the glory, you chant the Vishnu Sahasranama. So Shravanam, Kirtanam, Vishnu. Smaranam, you recall the glorious form of Vishnu. You recall the Leela of Vishnu in the different avatars. Pada Sevanam, one aspect of one Pada, an aspect of Vishnu is this world. The Vishnu is the creator of this world, is the Lord of this world. So even worship of Vishnu in the divine aspect in the temples, or as manifested in this world, you serve human beings also as a service of God. Karma yoga as taught by Krishna to Arjuna, that also is bhakti. Archanam, actual worship of the deity in the temple. Vandanam, repetition of the or salutation of the holy presence. Dasyam, I am the servant of the Lord, regarding yourself as a servant of the Lord like Hanuman. Or Sakhyam, the Lord, being more intimate with the Lord like Uddhava or Arjuna. So these are different stages of bhakti. Finally, Atmanivedanam, always continuous surrender to the Lord. This is from Bhagavatam. Madhvacharya himself has given how bhakti starts. Mahatmya Gana Purvastu. First of all, by hearing about the glory of Vishnu, the glory of God, one gets bhakti, a devotion that there is a faith, such a thing exists. This is amazing. I must be devoted. I must love and worship the Lord. So out of awe of the magnificence of God comes bhakti. So Sudhrida, Sarvatodhika, it increases. Sneha Bhakti iti prokta. This continuous flow of love towards God is called bhakti. And he mentions Taya Mukti, Nachanyatha. By that bhakti alone, one gets mukti, liberation. What will liberation be like? Liberation is as bhakti intensifies, you get the grace of Vishnu. By the grace of Vishnu, all your accumulated karma, by which you are being whirled around in the merry-go-round of samsara, that accumulated karma is wiped out. One is free of karma. After the end of this life, one ascends to the plane of Vishnu, to Vaikuntha, and there are different kinds of mukti in store for you, depending upon the intensity of your bhakti. There is Salokya. Salokya means you remain in the same loka as Vishnu. You go to Vaikuntha and stay there. Samipya, you are close to the divine presence. And these are all eternal. Once you go there, it's forever. And then there is then Sarupya. You attain to a divine form like Vishnu, but due to continuous meditation on the glories of Vishnu. Sayujya, you become one with the form of Vishnu. There is a fifth one called Sarshti, but we'll not go into that because there's some controversy about that. So these are different forms. Now, in Advaita, when you say I am God, become one with God, that is complete anathema to Dvaita Vedanta. Why would you want to become one with God and lose your own individuality? If you lose your individuality, you cannot enjoy the presence of God. Madhvacharya and his followers will argue. You must retain your individuality. Otherwise, if you lose your individuality, just like death. Mukti cannot be death. Mukti cannot be annihilation. So you will remain with your individuality, but enjoy the divine presence forever and ever. So that is the idea. What is the relationship between knowledge and bhakti? So in Advaita Vedanta, Dvaita, dualistic Vedanta, knowledge is also important. Karma is important. Knowledge is important. Bhakti is, of course, most important. Meditation is also important. Knowledge leads to more bhakti in Dvaita Vedanta. Madhvacharya says, Bhaktya jnanam tato bhakti, tato drishti tatascha sa, tato mukti, tato bhakti, saiva syat sukharupini. Very interesting. The circular relationship between bhakti and jnana. Once you have some faith in God, bhaktya, by that faith, you attain to jnanam. What is the jnana means knowledge? What kind of knowledge? That I am not this physical body. I am a spark of consciousness. I am Jiva. That is one. Second, more important, higher than me, higher than the Jivatma, there is this Paramatma, a supreme self, an oversoul in Aurobindian language, which is Vishnu. And my relation to that, it's different from me. I'm not that. It's different from me. My relation to Vishnu is bhakti. So by this jnana, tato bhakti, your bhakti will increase. By that increased bhakti, tato drishti, enlightenment will come. You will be graced with the vision of Vishnu. You will realize that Vishnu is real, and that is enlightenment. You realize your permanent relationship with Vishnu. Vishnu is the Lord, I am the servant. Or Vishnu is my friend, I am Sakha. What that relationship leads to mukti, tato mukti. Mukti means freedom from the cycle of birth and death, and ever eternally living in heaven, Vaikuntha, in the presence of God. And then what will happen after mukti? Will you lose bhakti? Of course not. Tato bhakti. And then bhakti will increase even more. And that bhakti, which you eternally have for Vishnu in Vaikuntha, saiva syat sukharupini. That is the nature of great bliss. And so forever you will remain with Vishnu, enjoying great bliss. So very, very good conclusion. So that is oversimplifying. The Madhva system is very complex, very sophisticated, probably more complex than Advaita Vedanta. Many people think that Advaita is all rationality and reason, and dualistic religion, Madhva Vedanta or others are maybe more based on faith. No, in fact, the best logicians, some of the greatest logicians that ancient and medieval India has produced were actually the Madhva logicians, who spent a lot of their energy attacking the Advaita Vedanta position. One thing that the Madhva logicians do, they are very aggressive. One of the things that a guru does in the Madhva tradition is not only teaches you about Vishnu and that Vishnu is the Swatantra, you are all Paratantra and all this is taught, but also takes care to refute all other systems. Materialists and Nayayikas and Bauddha and Sankhya and Advaita especially. Special target of their venom is Advaita. That is refuted. So you may say, why so much aggression? So they say they are not out of ill will. One's faith can only be certain when you realize that this is the correct philosophy and the others are wrong. Then only your faith will be on a solid foundation. So that makes them quite aggressive debaters, actually, the Dvaita Vedantas. It led up, after Madhvacharya, there was about a period of 300-400 years of intense polemics, attacks and counterattacks between Advaita and Dvaita. The Dvaitins trying to prove Advaita to be a false doctrine, and Advaitins defending Advaita Vedanta. So the advantage is many wonderful texts were produced. Indian philosophy really flowered. There are two periods in which Indian philosophy flowered. One is the nearly 1,000-year debate between Hindus and Buddhists. On one side, the Buddhists, Yogacara, Shunyavadins, Vaibhashika, Sautrantika, different Buddhist schools. On the other side, Nayayikas, Sankhyans, Vaisheshikas, Purva Mimamsakas, and Advaitins later on. So it led to great flowering of Indian philosophy. And the next was an internal debate between Dvaita and Advaita. That also led to great flowering of Indian philosophy. This attacking others, it reminds me, in the World Parliament of Religions in Toronto a couple of years back, I attended this session an evangelical Christian. So generally, they are not at all in favor of parliament of religions and harmony between religions. The idea is we are right and everybody else is wrong. So one evangelical teacher, he came to the parliament of religions. So that session was really crowded. Everybody wanted to hear what he had to say. So he said, what we are interested in is, in evangelical Christianity, is that we want to lead a life according to Jesus Christ and tell everybody else that they are wrong. They have to be brought to this also. So I asked a question. It's a wonderful thing if you want to lead a life according to the teachings of Jesus Christ. But why is it equally important to tell others that they are wrong? So he said, no, this is very important to us. That this is the only right thing, and others have to be told that what they're doing is wrong and they have to come to this path. So the Madhvas are something like that, this path is correct. And so, but the Madhvas are not fanatical in that sense. They use reason and debate to engage with other systems of philosophy. Okay. Basically, this is a dualism. This is out and out dualism because they talk about, this is crucial, Pancha Bheda, 5 differences. Madhva philosophy talks about 5 differences. What are these 5 differences on which they are uncompromising? Remember, Jiva Jagat Ishvara. Ishvara is Vishnu or God, and Jiva is us, and Jagat is the material world. Madhva philosophy says there are 5 differences here, permanent differences, cannot be negotiated. Ishvara and Jiva, between Vishnu and you, difference, one difference. Ishvara Jiva Bheda. Second, Ishvara Jagat, between Ishvara and this world. Jagat, or they will say Jada, insentient world, between Ishvara and Jada. And then the third one is between Jiva and Jada. Between us, you and the table you're sitting on, I and the computer I'm handling, we are different. The computer is Jada, I am Chetana. Then fourth, between Jiva and Jiva, you are different, I am different. Each Jiva is different. And fifth, last, between Jada and Jada, the table is different and the computer sitting on the table is different from the table. So each entity is different from the other. And these Pancha Bheda, 5 differences, they hold on to. This is why it is firmly dualistic. Dualistic means not just 2, plural, 2 and more. Plural entities are there, millions of entities, and they're distinct from each other. Not Advaitans, Abheda, or Brahman alone is real, all differences are illusory. No, these are absolutely. One good way of understanding Madhva Vedanta is the way we understand and see the world, perceive the world, and deal with the world, common sense way. Madhva Vedanta says it is real. That's the truth. You find people are different from you, right? Yes. So that's true. They are different from you. God is there. You will feel that God is different from you. Yes. So that's the truth. God is different from you. So it's a very common sense affirming philosophy. So that's all I will say about Madhva Vedanta and stop here. This is the prototype. God is real. Have faith on God. Surrender to God. Worship God. By the grace of God, you will be liberated. In liberation, there is no more suffering, no more samsara. The cycle of birth and death is at an end. Finished.